Affirmations for Self-Healing by Swami Kriyananda. Today we're focused on service. Service is ennobling. It is a way of offering our human littleness into the great reality that is God. Service should not be given with the thought that one is serving people merely. It should be given with an inward consciousness to the Lord, who resides in all creatures. When we serve others in this spirit, we find our own spirits becoming freed from egotism. Peace then fills us in the realization that there isn't anyone with whom we need compete. What joy to think that we belong to God. And let's affirm together, I will serve God through others.
I will serve God through others.
And by my service to Him,
And by my service to Him,
release the hold the ego has on me.
release the hold the ego has on me.
I am free in God.
I am free in God.
In God I am free.
In God I am free.
I will serve God through others.
I will serve God through others.
And by my service to Him,
And by my service to Him,
release the hold the ego has on me.
release the hold the ego has on me.
I am free in God.
I am free in God.
In God I am free.
In God I am free.
And a little quieter, I will serve God through others.
I will serve God through others.
And by my service to Him,
And by my service to Him,
release the hold the ego has on me.
release the hold the ego has on me.
I am free in God.
I am free in God.
In God I am free.
In God I am free.
And whispering, I will serve God through others. And by my service to Him, release the hold the ego has on me. I am free in God. In God I am free. And silently, I will serve God through others. And by my service to Him, release the hold the ego has on me. I am free in God. In God I am free. And please pray silently with me. All that I do, Lord, I do for love of Thee. Accept the flowers of my service to Thee as I place them on Thy altar of omnipresence. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Welcome once again to our Sunday Satsang, and especially to those who are watching online today. This is a reading from Whispers from Eternity, which is a book of prayers and poems by Paramahansa Yogananda. I vow never again to turn my gaze from Thee. I take this sacred vow. Never will I lower my love's gaze below the eyebrow horizon of my constant thoughts of Thee. Never will I turn my uplifted inner sight away from Thee. Never will I let my mind dwell on anything that reminds me not of Thee. I will disdain the nightmare of ignorant behavior. I will court all dreams of noble achievement, those of love, kindness, and understanding, for they are Thy dreams. Though I dream many dreams, wakefully I will ever think of Thee. In the sacred fire of constant remembrance, keep ever alight on my soul's altar. I will ever behold Thy presence with the watchful eyes of devotional love. Thy grace has shown me that the dualities of health and sickness, life and death, joy and sorrow are but passing fantasies. I am finished with those eternally self-canceling delusions. I am persuaded at last that there is but one abiding reality, Thy eternal, ever conscious, ever new, ever thrilling, infinite bliss. And this is another reading from the autobiography of a yogi written by Paramahansa Yogananda in the very last chapter. And this is a letter that was written to Yogananda towards the end of the Second World War. And this is a disciple who is in London during the bombing. He's in a watchtower and he's seen the city destroyed before him, but he's a disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda. And he, while he's watching the city be destroyed, wrote this letter to Paramahansa Yogananda as his disciple. When I read the East-West, that's the magazine that Yogananda created back in California, I realized how far apart we seem to be, apparently living in two different worlds. Beauty, order, calm, and peace come to me from Los Angeles, sailing into port as a vessel laden with the blessings and comfort of the Holy Grail to a beleaguered city. I see, as in a dream, your palm tree grove and the temple at Encinitas with its ocean stretches and mountain views, and above all, its fellowship of spiritually minded men and women, a community comprehended in unity, absorbed in creative work and replenished in contemplation. It is the world of my own vision, in the making of which I hoped to bear my little part, and now, perhaps in the body, I shall never reach your golden shores, nor worship in your temple. But it is something, and more, to have had the vision and know that in the midst of war, there is still a peace that abides in your brothers and among your hills. Greetings to all the fellowship from a common soldier, written on the watchtower, waiting for the dawn. And it is such a beautiful description of a true disciple. Because no matter what is happening in our lives, just as this man, bombs were falling around him, he connected with his spiritual family. He connected with his guru on a spiritual level. He connected in his heart with the brotherhood that he dreamed of and was his vision for the world, same as Yogananda. And so we are never alone in this world. Yogananda came to show us this fact. Yogananda came to show us that brotherhood and love for one another and cooperation and living for God in deep meditation and selfless service is the only way to live. And because he created these beautiful temples and communities while he was alive, he's given us an example of what to do. And Swami Kriyananda took on that mission when he came to Yogananda. Yogananda commissioned him to start communities. He told him again and again, you have a great work to do. And so the subject of communities would come up all the time in their conversations together. Yogananda always told Kriyananda that that would be his work, to give people the inner life, to give people Kriya Yoga, to give people the means and the wherewithal and the techniques and the help to go inside so they can touch Divine Mother once and for all. Once and for all, really let this world go, like that man on the watchtower. Let all of our worries go, all of the busyness and the distractions and the desires and the attachments. Let them go and go inside and feel the presence of Divine Mother. And then once you touch that love, once you feel it in your heart, that becomes your reality. That becomes your guiding force. That becomes what you bring into this world in your own unique way, right where God has placed you. And so we need this technique of meditation and Kriya Yoga. We need to have the discipline to actually be self-realized, to go inside and to understand once and for all that we are children of God. We need that. But we also need to serve. And we also need to share that, because it's not just for us. And the more you meditate, the more you expand and the more you grow. You grow towards the light and you expand out toward your brothers and sisters in this world. In the Second World War, they didn't know there was going to, ever be another war. It looks like there just might be someday. But where will we be in that? Where are we right now? We'll know where we will be in that if in this moment we are taking our spiritual life seriously. We can't wait for it to happen and then say, oh God, God save me. That's what we do. We put off our realization and our experience of the presence of God to the future. When I'm done with this, when I'm done with my education, when I'm done with my marriage, when I'm done with my money making, when I'm done with my desires, when I'm done with my attachments, then I will find you. But it's not like that. Because God comes like a thief in the night, and he comes in all different ways, and he comes to test us sometimes. And we want to be ready. We want to be ready, like that man on the watchtower. We want to be there, calmly centered, absolutely open to God's wisdom and his guidance in the situations where he puts us. We're not going to find it out there. We have the power of the Guru within us, and that's why we practice Kriya Yoga, so that we can experience that power. You know, I found on the internet a beautiful, it was sent to me by Assisi, and they're just wrapping up a 2-week extravaganza. It's a celebration of 30 years of their community. They have just been donated land, and they're going to build a beautiful temple. And so they thought to celebrate it by having an international Kriyaban retreat. So Kriyabans from all over Europe and all over America and all over India, many people from India went, have spent the last week or days meditating together and feeling the brotherhood of what Yogananda brought, of what Yogananda wanted us to feel in these spiritual communities. And I remember when they did a beautiful video, and different ones got up to speak, and they were just explaining how the community started 30 years ago and what were the future goals of the community for 30 years in the future. So different ones came up to speak, and there were the ones that had been there at the beginning, and there were the brand new, bright, shiny faces that came in the last 10 years and with the future of the 30 years ahead of them. It was so inspiring because I remember when the community started, it wasn't easy. In Italy, they had a very difficult time. I remember when Jyotish and Devi left America to go with Swami to Italy, and they had a young son. They went with Swami to Italy to start a community. It was not easy for them to go. It wasn't easy for anybody to go. But they went. They went to Italy, and they started teaching all over Italy with Swami. And then Swami said, let's go to Assisi, the land of St. Francis. It's the most beautiful city I think I've ever seen. Not so much aesthetically, although it is, because there are flowers everywhere, there's shrines. It's a Catholic country, and in this particular city, it's dedicated to St. Francis. Everywhere you look, there's a statue of a saint, there's beauty, there's lots of churches and bells are ringing. It's actually quite beautiful outwardly. But St. Francis, it's a very devotional country. St. Francis was a very joyful, devotional saint, and they have dedicated a whole city to him, St. Francis of Assisi. And so that's where Swamiji wanted to start our community. Because in the early days, when St. Francis was with his monks, they had nothing. They had no material resources whatsoever. They renounced the world. And they banded together, the brothers, the band of brothers, they called themselves, and they went around Italy and they spoke. And they gave up everything. These were young men from wealthy families. It was not easy for their families to let go of them. The tradition was that they stayed in the family, worked in the father's business, and that's the culture. But they broke away from that because of the love from God, that love in their hearts. And they wanted to share that joy and that love. So they went all around Italy. Italy is alive with devotion because of St. Francis. It's such a beautiful testimony to devotion and joyful loving of God. And they served. They served the poor. They built churches. They they were martyred for their faith. These band of brothers were very sincere about finding God and sharing God. And so this is where Assisi was started. This is where Ananda was started, was in this city. And how fitting for Swamiji to start a community there, a Kriya Yoga, Paramahansa Yogananda spiritual community. Because Swamiji is also a saint of devotion and joy. And he was drawn there because of the magnetism of his heart, and because that's where Master wanted him to go. And so when they first started out Ananda, honestly, they had nothing. They were freezing cold in the winter. They had these little apartments, and the heaters never worked. The electricity was always off. We know that one. And they were very hot in the winter, and they didn't speak the language, and Swami told them to go out and start the work. Well, Jyotish and Devi, being the great souls that they are, and a few others, did it. They didn't know. They got an interpreter, and they went out, and they would teach classes, and then they would interpret the classes, and they had tremendous difficulties starting that work. But that was 30 years ago, and they stuck to it. Even at one point, when they finally got a place where they could all be in Assisi, the Carbonari, the policeman, came one day and arrested and put them in jail. About 10 of our members, Kirtani and Anjali, they were thrown in jail because they said that they were embezzling money. It was kind of funny because they had no money. So they were always asking for money. So they threw them in jail. It was a Catholic country. The reason they did that is because Ananda was magnetic, and Ananda was a threat to the Catholic Church, and Ananda was growing because it was meditation and yoga, and they were threatened. So the church had them throw our people in jail for quite a few days. And I remember when we got the news that they were in jail, they showed pictures of it on this video that I just saw. Smiling, happy, cheerful faces going to jail. It was just, there was the big policemen, and they were dragging them into the cars and handcuffing them and throwing them in jail, and they were just smiling, and it was not easy. I'm sure they had to explain to their families why they were in jail. You try to imagine that. Hi, Mom, I'm writing you from jail. We're whatever. And then I remember seeing the faces when they got out. Same happy, smiley, cheerful, joyful faces. Like didn't even faze them. Didn't even faze them. And then they just went about, all the charges were acquitted, they were false charges. It was just some game they were playing. But it scared them. Being in prison is no fun. But then they just kept on going. And that was 20 years ago. And then for the next 10 years, it seems like Ananda Assisi took off. And more people started coming from all over Europe. And now they have a large community with donated land. They're building a temple, and it's so beautiful, the spirit there. They showed the people singing and the young people coming and families having their children there, and so much joy in this community. And it's so beautiful because they started out with nothing. They started out just like we're starting out here in India when Swamiji decided to come to India. With nothing. We started out with nothing. And look how it's growing. Look how the people are coming. Look how we're reaching out. Look how there are lighthouses all over India now. Centers all over India. It's so beautiful. But when you see these souls that started the community and now at the 30-year mark, they're radiant, they're happy, they're secure, they're calm. They know who they are, and they know where they're going. And that's the grace of the Guru. That's the grace of the Guru. So Yogananda has his community in America, he has his community in Europe, and now we're trying to build this community here in India. There were 2 young people at the end of the video that got up to speak, and it was just so beautiful, and one of them gave an image. And I know you probably have heard this story, but she was giving her vision of the next 30 years. And there was a rich man, and he had 5 sons, and he was leaving his body. And he told his sons that what he wanted to give them each was a stick. 5 sticks. Each one got a stick. And they looked at the stick and they said, okay, this is my inheritance. This is my inheritance. And he said, each one of you, with that little stick, you could just break it. And it's very weak and it doesn't last. But when you put the 5 sticks together and then you wrap it very strongly, you can't break that stick. Stay together. He said, stay together. And this woman was telling this story, but she added a little caveat to the story. She said she sees Ananda as each person, each soul here, as a stick of light, as a beam of light. And we're all individual lights. But when we come together and we're wrapped with the Guru's love, we're wrapped with Divine Mother's loving embrace, nothing can harm us. Nothing can tear us apart. Nothing can make us go back to the world because we're strong. We're strong in Divine Mother's love. So each one of us is a light. Each one of us does need one another. Each one of us does have a vision of the future if we meditate and we just go forward. And the other young person was saying 30 years from now, she sees everybody as a Nayaswami. It was kind of cute. Everybody wearing blue. But she did say, these people are young. I mean, they're like you guys, all of you guys. And she said she saw that all of Europe coming to Ananda to get fed by Master's love through each one of the disciples there. And she was so happy that she had found Ananda. So Master wasn't for organizations. Master wasn't for hierarchy and who's in charge and great sums of money. Ananda has struggled on many levels from the very beginning. But to see Assisi in this video and 30 years of devotees and disciples that have taken their spiritual lives seriously was so inspiring. Each country is going to do it a little differently, but each one of us should do it the same. Each one of us should do it, should be a disciple in the manner of Swami Kriyananda and give our whole lives to God. Give every moment to the Guru. Let him think our thoughts. Let him speak our words. Let him act through our hands. Swami Kriyananda, we have him as an example. Meditate on his life as a disciple. Meditate on his life as a free soul. You know, we have the example of his life. It wasn't easy for him. It's not easy for any of us. It's not easy for us to pull away from this world and to be calm in our minds and to meditate deeply and then go back to work. It's very difficult in this world. We don't have those caves that we can go to in this incarnation. But we have the cave, we have the portable paradise of love in our heart. And this is where the Guru resides. We can never forget that. We can never forget that the Guru is with us every single moment. And he will guide India. He is guiding India through each one of us. He's taking care of us. Maybe we'll all end up in prison someday together. But with our happy faces, we'll go in, and with our happy faces, we'll come out. Each one of us has so much to offer to this brotherhood of great souls whose only goal is to find God. And, you know, communities don't work unless people are serious about finding God. Why do you want to be in a community that doesn't, each person isn't trying their hardest? And also, communities don't work if everybody's saying, oh, that one's more spiritual, this one's not, that one has that fault, this one has that. I mean, that's division. That's the world. That's a worldly consciousness. What binds us together? What is that underlying thread that will never be torn asunder? That light. It's Divine Mother's love. That binds us together. And the more we share that love and people experience that in their own hearts, then we know that we are on the right track. And we will find God very quickly in this lifetime. So spiritual communities aren't just a social experiment. Yogananda's spiritual communities, Swami Kriyananda's spiritual communities are meant for each individual to get the support and the help to find God right where they are. I listened to a tape of Swami last night. I'm sorry, I was going to play it at the Kriyabans retreat this morning, but the battery was out and I won't go into it. But anyway, Swami was talking to us in 1982, and it was the very first Kriyabans retreat that we had at Ananda. And he was telling us, he said, again, he was very emphatic about it. He said, this is for you. He said, this is for you. This is not for me. I'm not doing this for me. This is for you. And then he said, self-realization. Realizing the self. That's what Ananda is about. That's what Kriya Yoga brings. That's what the masters have come to give us. The self merging with the higher self. Our soul merging with God. It can be done. He said, get rid of the ego. Let go of littleness. Let go of... He said, don't live in littleness. He said, give until it hurts, like Mother Teresa said. She said, give until it hurts. But it won't hurt. It will only expand your heart, and you'll be helping other people. And you'll be freeing yourself from the thought of I, me, mine. That's the ego. I just wanted to mention also that Jyotishan Devi, and for all of us that have left things behind and come to the different centers, but particularly Jyotishan Devi, they left their son to go to Italy. And there was it was very difficult for them to do that. And, cluck, cluck, cluck from people and all of it. But, Master took such good care of their family. And their son is radiant in light, very healthy and successful, and their family's very close. We can let go of these things. We can let go of these things that we hold close, that we think we're the only ones that can do this in our life. We're the ones that raise our kids. We're the ones that do everything. We don't do anything. And at the end of our life, it all goes. But it's such a beautiful thing to see, because there's Jyotishan Devi 30 years later at this Kriyabans retreat, radiant and joyful and loving and kind and just resting in the thought of God. You could just feel it. What a life. What a wonderful example for us, householders that are renunciates, that are Kriyabans, that really have given their life to God, not only in talk, but in action. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you about Assisi and India and where we're going in the next 30 years, and we should meditate on that. Where are we going to be in the next 30 years? What is our goal for ourselves and for one another, and for Ananda, and for the Kriya Yogis in India? 30 years from now, meditate. Think about it. It could be anything. Imagine the best. Imagine a great community with beautiful souls and loving energy and harmonious and peaceful and sharing and abundant, healthy children. Imagine that. We could have that here in India. We have it in America. We have it in Italy. We have it, the beginnings right here. Right here. We can have that here in India. And especially in India, because you already know why we're doing it. You already have that consciousness. It's in your culture. It's in your genes. But we need to, Swami said in this talk, he said you need to love heroically and love in action. He said love in action. He said this isn't an incarnation where you can just sit in your little room and think about your own realization. This is an incarnation where you have to share. And so I wanted to just close with another reading from the autobiography of a yogi. And this is from the last page. Far into the night, my dear friend, the first Kriya Yogi in America, discussed with me the need for world colonies founded on a spiritual basis. The ills attributed to an anthropomorphic abstraction called society may be laid more realistically at the door of every man. Utopia must spring in the private bosom before it can flower in civic virtue. Man is a soul, not an institution. His inner reforms alone can lend permanence to our outer ones. By stress on spiritual values, self-realization, a colony exemplifying world brotherhood is empowered to send inspiring vibrations far beyond its locale. August 15th, 1945, close of Global War II, end of the world, dawn of an enigmatic atomic age. The Hermitage residents gathered in the main hall for a prayer of thanksgiving. Heavenly Father, may never it be again. Thy children go henceforth as brothers.